Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Jeremiah, the 38th chapter. This is Jeremiah chapter 38, verse 1. Then Shephatiah the son of Matan, and Gedaliah the son of Pashur, and Jukal the son of Shelemiah, and Pashur the son of Malchiah heard the words that Jeremiah had spoken unto all the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, He that remaineth in the city shall die by the sword, by the famine, and by the pestilence. And he that goeth forth to the Chaldeans shall live, for he shall have his life for a prey, and shall live. And having your life for a prey, meaning like it'll be, a prey is like a spoil, right? So in other words, like a reward unto you for obeying the instructions of the Lord, you would be able to preserve your life. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, this city shall surely be given into the hand of the king of Babylon's army, which shall take it. And so them hearing this, in their minds, they didn't like that, right? And I guess to a degree, with already people defecting to the sides of the Babylonians, meaning like surrendering willingly to go along with the Babylonians, you had people that, especially these princes, they were upset at hearing Jeremiah preach this because it would encourage more and more people to do that. And from their perspective, that's not what they wanted. Therefore the princes said unto the king, We beseech thee, let this man be put to death. For thus he weakeneth the hands of the men of war that remain in the city. So by the things that he is preaching, he's making these men, he's discouraging them, the ones that are left to help defend us. And the hands of all the people in speaking such words unto them. For this man seeketh not the welfare of this people, but the hurt. See, so they made Jeremiah sound like, just like he was just against his own people. And then Zedekiah the king said, Behold, he is in your hand, for the king is not he that can do anything against you. So Zedekiah went along with it and said basically like, all right, do what you got to do. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to, not going to get in your way. Then took they Jeremiah and cast him into the dungeon of Malchiah, the son of Hamelech, that was in the court of the prison. So the court of prison where he was, they basically put him in the dungeon area of that, right, which is a less favorable place to be. And they let down Jeremiah with cords, which is like cords are like ropes. And in the dungeon there was no water but mire. So Jeremiah sunk in the mire. So it was deep. It was somewhere lower, right? A lower part of the cell, you could say, or of the court. And so they had to let him down by way of ropes. And as it says, there wasn't any water in there. You can imagine probably maybe like an abandoned well or something, similar looking. So it was just mud. And basically Jeremiah was just in there. Now, when Ebed-Melech, and that was a means of leaving you to die, right? Either by starvation or, suffocation or, freezing. It was just basically not a habitable way to dwell. Okay, and in a case like that, you'd end up just dying. Now, when Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, one of the eunuchs, which was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon, the king then sitting in the gate of Benjamin. So basically, being one of the eunuchs, now I believe he wasn't like, this eunuch wasn't the kind of eunuch of say having his parts cut off, but more one who had an office in the king's house, right? Because you have different kinds of, when you hear the term eunuch. In fact, let's look up the word eunuch here and see. Yeah, an officer. Um, so it says here, from an unused root meaning to castrate, a eunuch by implication valid, especially of the female apartments, and thus a minister of state, chamberlain, eunuch, officer. So you had some eunuchs, right, where in order to be that role of like being in charge of the female, areas, they would castrate you, right? Because that way then you couldn't do anything with the women over there. But you also had let's look up here, a eunuch. Yeah, I believe there was also one that was, just sort of like an office, if I'm remembering correctly. So I guess to this point, maybe, he was one who was um castrated or something, or maybe not. Long story short, that's not of the utmost importance. But he was an officer in the king's house or in the king's court. And so having, seen where the king was, he basically went on to him um, to plead Jeremiah's case. And the Lord had put the spirit on him to do so. And which in the later chapters, you'll see that the Lord basically rewards him, right? Or yeah, you can just say rewards him for that deed that he did. So it says, Ebed-melech went forth out of the king's house and spake to the king, saying, My lord the king, these men have done evil in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have cast into the dungeon. And he is like to die for hunger in the place where he is, for there is no more bread in the city. Then the king, so basically the provisions are waning, and he's left in this dungeon here basically to starve to death. Then the king commanded Ebed-melech the Ethiopian, saying, Take from thence 30 men with thee, and take up Jeremiah the prophet out of the dungeon before he die. So go ahead, take such and such and go and get him out of there before he dies. Because, even though Zedekiah was, hard-headed, he still had some sense to know that, yeah, this man Jeremiah is, he's still a man of the Lord. Because if that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have constantly gone to inquire of Jeremiah about the words of the Lord, because they start to see the things that Jeremiah had been prophesying about for decades now coming to pass. Now, let me see. Let me cross-reference this here. See if I can find that chapter. It's when the Babylonians had come. So let's look for Ebed-melech. Okay. Yeah, here it is. In Jeremiah 39:16, when the Lord told Jeremiah, he said, Go and speak to Ebed-melech the Ethiopian, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Behold, I will bring my words upon this city for evil and not for good, and they shall be accomplished in that day before thee. But I will deliver thee in that day, saith the Lord, and thou shalt not be given into the hand of the men of whom thou art afraid, meaning their armies. For I will surely deliver thee, and thou shalt not fall by the sword, but thy life shall be for a prey unto thee, because thou hast put thy trust in me, saith the Lord. So he could have been, it doesn't say it directly, but Ebed-melech, he could have been like an Israelite, right? That was dwelling in Ethiopia, hence he was known as an Ethiopian, right? It's possible. So in any case, back in Jeremiah chapter 38, so he goes and he speaks for Jeremiah, and then the order is given to go and release Jeremiah and get him out of that dungeon. Verse 11, So Ebed-melech took the men with him and went into the house of the king under the treasury. So it was they went to the lower area, right? Probably some room or area under where the treasury was, and took thence out old cast clouts. These are like old rags, right? And like some old clothing and stuff like that is not really used, and old rotten rags, and let them down by cords. So they probably like knotted it up, to make it long enough to lower down into that dungeon. as it says, and let them down by cords into the dungeon to Jeremiah. And Ebedmelech the Ethiopian said unto Jeremiah, Put now these old cast clouts, and rotten rags under thine armholes, under the cords. And Jeremiah did so. So, you can imagine they probably told him, like, sort of like put it under your armpits, and that way, in however they visually described it to him, it would probably be more support so that they can pull him up, as opposed to him just holding on to it with his hands, which, you can, with how long he had been in there, you'd lose your grip and whatnot and fall back down, and that wouldn't be good. So they drew up Jeremiah with cords and took him up out of the dungeon, and Jeremiah remained in the court of the prison. Then Zedekiah the king sent and took Jeremiah the prophet unto him into the third entry that is in the house of the Lord. So this likely maybe might have been an entrance that wasn't really used too often. So basically, because Zedekiah wanted to speak to Jeremiah in private. So he takes him there. And the king said unto Jeremiah, I will ask thee a thing, hide nothing from me. So I want to ask you something, but make sure you tell me, you don't keep no secrets about it. Then Jeremiah said unto Zedekiah, If I declare it unto thee, wilt thou not surely put me to death? And if I give thee counsel, wilt thou not hearken unto me? Meaning, you're asking me to tell you everything, but if I tell you the truth of the matter, you say that, you're going to put me to death because you're not going to like the news. And if I give you the counsel of the Lord, you're not even going to listen to it anyway. So did Zedekiah the king swear secretly unto Jeremiah, saying, As the Lord Yahweh liveth, that made us this soul, right? In other words, that created us, I will not put thee to death, neither will I give thee into the hand of these men that seek thy life. So I'm not going to put you to death, and I won't let those that want you put to death to have the chance to do so. Then said Jeremiah unto Zedekiah, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, the God of hosts, the God of Israel, If thou wilt assuredly go forth unto the king of Babylon's princes, then thy soul shall live. So if you voluntarily go and surrender to the Chaldeans or the Babylonians, then they'll let you live. And this city shall not be burned with fire, and thou shalt live and thine house. So they won't need to completely destroy this place so long as you surrender, because you being the king, that would be admitting defeat, and then they would just, you'll be able to live. They take you to Babylon and you'd be all right. But if thou wilt not go forth to the king of Babylon's princes, then shall this city be given into the hand of the Chaldeans. So if you refuse and you want to continue to resist, the Lord is going to give this city up into their hands, and they're going to break through and they're going to destroy it. And they shall burn it with fire, and thou shalt not escape out of their hand. And at that point, you had been better off surrendering to them versus them coming in here and catching you, or you trying to escape and they catch you. And Zedekiah the king said unto Jeremiah, I am afraid of the Jews that are fallen to the Chaldeans, lest they deliver me into their hand and they mock me. So he was afraid of the humiliation that would come by those that had defected already or surrendered to the Chaldeans willingly, right? So those that maybe had taken heed to Jeremiah's words or seen that, it's pointless to try and resist against them. Let's just go and surrender, right? Wave the white flag. And, that's better than losing our lives in a hopeless battle. But he was afraid that if you go and voluntarily surrender, they're gonna look at you like, yo, so you said all that holding that tough guy bravado and yada, 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 all just to surrender at the end, And so what was that for? Look, you should have just done that from the beginning. Now look at all the people that had to die and all the, the things that had to happen before doing all this. So he was afraid of that he was trying to save face. He was afraid of that humiliation and whatever else they might want to do to him. But Jeremiah said, They shall not deliver thee, obey, I beseech thee. So the Babylonians are not gonna do that. They're not gonna give you up to them. You're gonna be fine. Just listen. The voice of the Lord Yahweh, which I speak unto thee, so it shall be well unto thee, and thy soul shall live. So just trust what I'm telling you. Listen to what the Lord has told me, and if you follow it, you'll be fine. But if thou refuse to go forth, so if you continue to resist and refuse to go and surrender, this is the word that the Lord Yahweh hath shewed me. And behold, all the women that are left in the king of Judah's house shall be brought forth to the king of Babylon's princes. They're going to take your wives, they're going to take your concubines, they're going to take the women in your court, the noble women, they're going to take them all, and they're going to be given unto the king of Babylon's princes. And those women shall say, so they're going to turn around and mock you in saying, thy friends have set thee on, meaning those that you trusted, your advisors and so on, have misled you, right? When it says set thee on, they basically incited and instigated you to continue on, right? And have prevailed against thee, meaning that they triumphed in convincing you to continue to resist against the Babylonians. Thy feet are sunk in the mire. So now, look at you now, right? You're now in a helpless position, like one whose feet are sunk in mud, like you're stuck in there, and they are turned away back. Okay, and all those, right, that you look to for that trust and support have all basically forsaken you and abandoned you. So Jeremiah is saying here, you're worried about reproach and you're worried about being mocked. This is what they're going to say about you if you don't go and surrender, and instead the Lord gives up this city to the Babylonians by force. So they shall bring out all thy wives and thy children to the Chaldeans, and thou shalt not escape out of their hand, but shall be taken by the hand of the king of Babylon. And thou shalt cause this city to be burned with fire. So by your disobedience, this place will be completely destroyed. Then said Zedekiah unto Jeremiah, let no man know of these words, and thou shalt not die. So if you want to live, you better make sure nobody finds out about this. But if the princes hear that I have talked with thee, and they come unto thee, and say unto thee, declare unto us now what thou hast said unto the king, hide it not from us, and we will not put thee to death. So if you tell us everything you said to Zedekiah, we'll let you live. We won't put you to death. Also, what the king said unto thee, and tell us what you said to him and everything he said to you. What did you guys talk about? But then shalt thou say unto them. So if any of them come, maybe they hear that I spoke with you, and they come and ask you what we spoke about, this is what you respond to them. I presented my supplication before the king, that he would not cause me to return to Jonathan's house to die there. So just tell them that you just basically beg me not to take you back to the prison at Jonathan's place, lest you end up dying over there because it was so bad. Then came all the princes unto Jeremiah. So after he had spoken with Zedekiah, just as Zedekiah had predicted, right, or suspected, the princes did come to Jeremiah and asked him, and he told them, according to all these words that the king had commanded. So they left off speaking with him, for the matter was not perceived. So he told them what Zedekiah told him to tell them, and then they eventually just left because they couldn't get any information about, anything that actually had happened there or what they had actually spoken about. So Jeremiah abode in the court of the prison until the day that Jerusalem was taken, and he was there when Jerusalem was taken. So he remained in that prison court, right? Not the dungeon, but the prison court up until the Babylonians actually broke through and took over Jerusalem. And that is the end of Jeremiah, the 38th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachah Kodash, And until next time, Shalom.